going to look at a shaking steering wheel, and we're going to diagnose it. And I don't know if you can notice this. I'm going to go ahead, as soon as we get a spot here, I'm going to go ahead and start applying the brake. Let's do that. I don't know if you can see the shaking going on there. Let's see if we get some of that wobbling action going on. So what's going on there is one of two things. It's either the wheel bearings or it's the brakes. And just to cut to the chase, I've already inspected the wheel bearings. It's definitely the brakes. So today we're going to go ahead and do some brakes. We're going to do rotors and we're going to do pads. Before you begin, you're going to make sure that you have your back wheels chalked, and make sure that you're on an inclined surface such that it will roll backwards if it's inclined at all. The reason for that is that the actual parking brake is on the front wheels, and so that's why you need to make sure that you're solid before you jack it up. Okay, so I've got the hubcap off. What you're going to do first is loosen these lug nuts while the wheel's still touching the ground. So that's what I'm going to do here. Just like that. Loosen them, and then you'll be good to go when you take it off once you've jacked it up. Okay, so I got the vehicle up on a jack stand. Always use jack stands. Don't ever rely on a jack. I've already loosened these, so I'm gonna go ahead and a little bit more here. All right, so now what we've got to do is we're going to have to undo this caliper here, remove the brake pads, and then we're going to do this whole assembly here. But all right, so on the back here we've got this 14mm bolt that needs to be undone first. And we're just gonna take that out there. Okay, this little 14mm bolt comes right out, and then the caliper should just slide right off, slide right up. Sometimes if it doesn't, you're just gonna give it a little nudge, like this. Okay. And then this slides right off the post. This gives access to the pads here. There's one, and the one in back. So just off like this, and we just set this aside like this. Okay, and we need to get this brake shoe off, and there we go, just like that. So at this point, it's helpful to clean everything down with brake fluid. I mean, not brake fluid, but the brake clean. This right here, because you want to get that dust and crap off there. So okay, next we want to go ahead and remove the two bolts, one here and one up here, that hold this shoe bracket on. All right. We have gotten the other 17mm bolt that was holding the brake shoe bracket on, and that just slides right off like that. Check it out. It's brake shoe bracket. Yep. So we're going to go ahead and just quickly loosen up the bolt holding the rotor to the hub. Ah! Well, ah! Or not, or take it. Ah! Ah! Okay. So now those bolts holding the rotor to the hub are loosened. All you need to do is get the axle nut off, slide the hub off, get the rotor out, and then we'll proceed to installing the new rotor. There's a cotter pin right here. I just bent it and I'm going to pull this right out. Pull her right out. This looks like it's a fairly new castle nut on this. You just work her out. No big deal. There's our cotter pin. Next, we have to get this bad boy done. Castle nut, sometimes called the cussin' nut. The reason you're cussing is because you're trying to get the stupid thing off. But I'm going to tell you a tip. If you want to get this off the easy way, what you do is you go in and you put the transmission in reverse. That will engage the clutch and the transmission, and that will hold it solid so you can come back with your breaker bar and knock that sucker out of there. And that did it. You may have to stand on this in order to get it to come loose, but that did it, sure enough. So off comes the castle nut. Now, big warning here. Behind here is a flat washer and a what's called a cone nut. If you get that cone nut in backwards, it's literally cone shaped. If you put it in backwards, your wheel will not stay on. You're going to be in a world of hurt. So it's very important when you're taking this stuff off, pay careful attention and keep it all together. See, I'm keeping this together like that. And then we've got our cone nut there. See the hub just slides right forward. Keep everything together. There's no need to take all kinds of crap apart. And here we have our rotor right there. Okay. So on to the new rotor. Hello there. Okay, so we're back here. We got our brand new rotor. Now this is what we're looking at. And you notice that this has all been shipped with a coating of grease on it. If you put this rotor on there just the way it is without doing anything, you're going to put it on, you're going to go hit your brakes, and you're not going to stop. Okay? The reason for that is you do not want any grease. You want it clear, and you actually need to scuff up the surface of the rotor so that the brake pads will set in. What you want to do is take your brake clean, okay? And you're going to give us a thorough cleaning. Don't just spray it and walk away, because what's going to happen is that's not going to get off. You need to take your fingers. I would recommend just using your fingers. You don't want to use any harsh brush at this point. And we're just going to gently give it a nice little rub down. Okay. Flip it over. You see that layer of crap on there? We want that off of there. And it doesn't always just come off just because you use a little bit of brake clean. Most of it comes off. But we're going to follow this up with a little bit of sandpaper. That's right, I said sandpaper. A very light grit sandpaper. Okay. So, you don't want to use that dirty thing. Let's go ahead and... Okay, so you can use a shop cloth. Paper towel works. Whatever you prefer. Just be careful if there's any residue from the paper towel coming off, that you clean it off. You can see here that I've gotten most of the shipping grease off of the surface of the rotor. It's very important at this stage, once you go to start assembling things, that everything be surgically clean. The reason is you don't even want your fingerprint grease on those brake pads or the surface here, because we want to ensure that we get friction and that the new brake pads settle in. Okay, so I've got some 120 grit sandpaper here. And I'm just going to lightly go around. I'm going to scuff the surface in a circular motion. Okay? Why circular motion? Well, you're trying to make sure that you don't create any sort of grooves. One of the reasons you end up replacing these rotors, it's because you have grooves on it. Okay, and so if we're making scratches in every which direction, then we're assuring that some of the scratches are going to at least be perpendicular to the direction of travel of the brake pad relative to the rotors that's spinning, and that's going to cause it to directly set in. Now another thing you need to know is when we put these brand new pads and rotors in, when you first go driving, you're going to get a little bit of smoke, not smoke, but you're going to get a little bit of odor as these are settling in. That should go away after about maybe a couple days, depending on how much braking you've done on it. So I like to do both sides because remember there's pads on each side you have to grab. And what we're doing is we're trying to just break up this glaze on this surface. Make sure that we get a good seal on this. Okay, so now you can see we've got a nice scuff on the surface, and I've changed my gloves out. It's important that you change your gloves out frequently if you're accumulating a whole bunch of dirt on your gloves. I highly recommend you get gloves. Don't just think, oh, I don't need gloves. These surgical gloves are just perfect. Okay, I'm just giving a final rinse down to make sure I've gotten all the crap off. Okay, we're back, and now what I'm going to do, I'm going to pick up my hub. It has that comb washer. Remember that comb washer sitting right there. We don't want it to fall out, so hang on to it. And then we're just going to pick up the rotor. The rotor's sitting flat here, so I'm just going to lay it right on top. Line up the holes. Okay. And I'm going to get these started on here. Gently again. Don't go going all bonzo and cranking on these suckers because you don't want to wreck them. And we go ahead and take the whole assembly and slide it right back onto the wheel here. Make sure that cone washer doesn't fall out. See how it's trying to get out of there? Don't let it get away from you. Okay. And see, because I kept this all together, I don't have to worry about did I get the direction right or not. It just takes a little bit of time to be careful. Makes your job go a lot easier. Why not? Okay. And then we're going to go ahead and grab our socket. Now this socket here is a 36. I wasn't sure what it was at first when I went to get it, so if you go looking for it, it's a 36. This is what you want to do. What I do is I tighten it up, back it off a little bit. You don't want to tighten it so tight that the wheel can't turn. But what I'm doing here is I'm getting the bearings packed in there. So, and of course I'm going to put on the cotter pin, and we'll be right back. And we can just tap this right through there. Get it all the way in there. Okay. And you just bend this back like this. This other one was bent back this way, I guess. This is fine. And our cotter pin is back in. So now what we have left to do is we need to put in the brake bracket with the pads, and then we're going to take the caliper, we're going to turn it back so that it'll fit around here. And we're going to go ahead and tighten up the 17mm bolt that holds on the brake shoe bracket. Tighten that and tighten that. Okay, so we go ahead and we're going to put the brake pads in. Yay. And you've got anti-rattle clips here. Make sure that you didn't lose those when you took this all apart. Those are kind of important to have. Just slide these little guys right in there. course, when you're doing this on camera, this always wants to not go in easily. Okay, it was a little bit of a pain, but you can see that it did get it done. So that's the inside pad. Okay, so now we've gotten both of the pads in, the back and the front. And now the only thing to do is to roll back the piston inside of the caliper so that this will come back over. See that little thing there? I'm going to go ahead and clean it off a bit. Okay, so what I'm going to want to do is take the cap off this, cover off this reservoir and the master cylinder. The reason is we're going to be backing out the piston, and we don't want to create pressure so that we can't do that. So we're going to need to give it a little bit of space to expand. Okay, so what I've got here is a special tool that's going to allow me to compress this piston here. I'm going to need to turn it. You don't, on these Subarus, Loals, you do not use just a C-clamp. It won't work. You've got to screw it back. Screw it back into the seating there. And that's what this special tool is for. It's got two little pins that fit into the grooves here, the holes. Now, the thing that you need to remember here is that when you put these back in, they need to line up a certain way because they're going to come down and hit against these. So I'm going to go ahead and do that real quick. You can see that I've tied it up here so it's out of the way. It's sitting on its little rotation pin back there. You see I've got the piston caliper the piston caliper tool is in there. The two little pins are lined up in the hole, and there's got this backing plate to apply pressure, and you basically just rotate this till you get it flat. Okay, you see I've got the piston rolled back to be level here. Now it will fit over the brake shoes. I'm just going to lower the caliper down over the brake shoes. So we just go ahead and tighten up this 14 mil bolt that's holding down the bottom of the caliper. Of course, the last thing to do is mount the wheel on. Make sure that you've got all your bolts tight, and let's put the wheel on. Now, if you followed my advice and kept your lug nuts in the hubcap, you won't be searching for them. And these lug nuts have a rounded side. Those rounded side goes in, okay? So we're going to do one of the lower ones here. And just do them by hand. Get them started. Again, I can't emphasize enough, do not cross thread these. You want to make your life miserable? Cross thread them. But I don't want to make my life miserable. I like to do a job nice and slow, carefully. I've only got one brake job to do, not 6 of them lined up. So that's why I take my time when I do this. Be right back. So just one quick pre-test, if you will, that I like to do on these is I like to go in and set the emergency brake, because remember it's the front brakes that are the emergency brake, and then I like to see if it's holding the wheel. I can also use that to help hold it for me so I can tighten down the nuts. So I can accomplish two things at once here. I'm kind of testing that, if nothing else, there's some sort of grip on these brakes I just did, so I won't be going down my hill and getting the ride of my life, the last one of my life, as I go flying into the Puget Sound. This isn't a boat, and these are going to be on tighter than... Okay, and so you can see it's holding there. Now the question is, will it release? Let me go ahead and undo release the emergency brake. Now the tire's going to spin. It's going to have a little bit of friction just because everything's tight in there. But you can see now I've got good spinach. So I'm fairly confident that this job has been done properly. You never really know though until you take it out on the road. That's really the proper test of this. Pop this back on. Let's go for a road test. Okay, so here I'm going to go ahead and do the initial test. I'm on a fairly level surface. I'm only going to go forward a little bit, hit the brakes, make sure they work. And then I go down my big hill and see if it stops me or not. All right, looks like I survived. So when you're breaking in a new set of rotors and pads, you want to go easy on the brakes, no hard stops for about the first day or so, you know, just to let the surfaces mate really well. And that's about it. We'll see you on the next one, guys. Take care.